story, gang. My name is Dr. Louisa Ponnampalam. I work at the MareCet Research Organization. I am the Executive Director and co-founder of this organization. We are a local marine grassroots conservation NGO, and our work is focused on the research and conservation of marine mammals and their habitats here in Malaysia. So my story goes back many years from the present time to when I was just a little girl of 10 years old. So essentially what I'm doing today is living out a childhood dream. When I was 10 years old, my mother showed me a newspaper article that had a picture of a diver scuba diving over a coral reef, and the photo caption said something like a marine biologist is inspecting the reef. I was so taken by that I said to my mom, I want to be a marine biologist. And I didn't really know what that meant at the time, but it just sounded very exciting. And so I sort of pursued that idea of being a marine biologist, as well because I spent a lot of time by the seaside during my school holidays. We would go to Terengganu a lot during school holidays, and I would play by the beach and swim in the sea, and I just fell in love. I really fell in love with the sea. And I knew from a very young age that I wasn't going to want to do a job that would keep me just in an office setting. I would want to have a job that would take me outdoors and into nature and into the sea where I loved. So how I got started is by pursuing this childhood dream that I had. I pursued it tenaciously throughout my teenage years. So it was in my teenage years that I then developed a huge obsession for dolphins. And I loved everything dolphins. I had, everything dolphin on me. I had earrings, t-shirts, toys, etc. All that had dolphins on it. And then I would, so I pursued this dream, and eventually I applied to go to university abroad to study marine science so that I could kickstart this dream of becoming a marine biologist. So I was just driven by curiosity. As a kid, I was driven by curiosity and a love for the sea. And I would see newspaper articles. So I started a scrapbook as a kid. I had a scrapbook where I would cut out newspaper articles that had anything to do with marine life at all. Not just dolphins or whales, but turtles, sea cucumbers, sea anemone, fish, sharks. And a lot of these articles talked about the threats that a lot of these animals, species, are facing. For example, I still remember an article that I cut out where there was a picture of a turtle with a plastic bag in its mouth, and that really broke my heart as a little girl. And I thought, I need to do something to save this situation in my very simplistic mind back then. So I was really driven by a love for marine life and feeling the need to do something for these animals that seem to me to be helpless for themselves and voiceless for themselves. And I realized that a lot of the problems that they were facing was being caused by us human beings, because we are either littering their habitat, or we are developing buildings and construction near their habitat, or we utilize, we extract, we fish from the sea. So I think even very early on, I was very moved to do something. And then back then, with all my interest in marine mammals, I found it quite difficult to get information about Malaysian marine mammals. We're talking, this is during the 1990s and the early 2000s, so it was not easy. Social media wasn't a thing at the time, so there was no Facebook or Instagram, Twitter. So a lot of it was you can surf the net for some articles, or you have to get it from books or magazines. So I found that there was not enough information to inform myself, my teenage self, of what marine mammals we had, what were the actual threats that they were facing. And so that drove me basically to I told myself I want to go and seek knowledge outside, where I knew there are people studying and working on marine mammals, and I wanted to learn all those skills that I needed and bring them back to Malaysia to be able to contribute, to be able to start studying these animals that we didn't really have much information about, and using that information to be able to push and promote for their conservation. And has that remained the same? Well, I would say so. So I have been studying dolphins since 2004. I officially finished my dissertation, my doctoral studies in 2009, and as I had planned, I returned from overseas and I came back to Malaysia to work. And so even though maybe my perceptions of what being a marine biologist has changed from the little girl or teenage girl that I was, certainly the love and the drive to do this work remains the same, because I'm still here, still doing this, still trying to understand these animals and still trying to push for the conservation of them and their habitats. So to do the job that I currently do, which is I do research on marine mammals, I also do education work. I also do policy work, in the sense that we use a lot of our research data to advise and make recommendations to the government for policy documents and decisions made for conservation. I think it requires skills such as a good understanding of science, marine science in particular, and of course a good understanding of the life history as well as the ecology and biology of the species that we work on. So what do we work on? We work on a few different species here in Malaysia. We work on dugongs, we work on Indo-Pacific finless porpoises, Indo-Pacific humpback dolphins, as well as Irrawaddy dolphins. So what skills that are needed are scientific skills and scientific knowledge to know how to do research, to be able to collect the appropriate data that will help us inform the people who are in power about decisions that they should make about the animals as well as the marine environment in which they live. The other skill that I learned along the way that we need to have to do this kind of work is communication skills. It is very important to be doing to know how to communicate with people, because I work a lot in the conservation arena. Now, what does that mean? Often, a lot of people think that just doing science alone means you're doing conservation work, but that's not entirely correct. And or often people think that maybe doing conservation work is simply things like maybe sharing social media posts or doing a beach cleanup. Those are all good things. However, in order to really affect change, on a certain topic that we want, whether it's about dolphins getting caught in nets or litter on the beach or underwater noise that is disturbing marine animals, we need to know how to communicate the issue to the right people. So you could be communicating with the general public, you could be communicating with government agencies, other scientists. So definitely I think, for example, if in terms of studying for an academic degree, certainly a degree in biology or in natural sciences, marine science is important, but also other degrees that people could go for are like the social sciences, psychology, engineering to some extent could also be useful. Computer science could also be useful in this line of work. As for me, I studied marine science for university, and a lot of the other skills that I acquired to do this job, I learned on the job along the way throughout the years. So my job involves a few things. As I mentioned, research. Research means I have to go into the field, right? So if you look at my backdrop, you see see a big group of dolphins. So my job requires me to get out to sea, to see the dolphins, to see the dugongs, to see the whales that we work with. So, and each time we go out between 10 to 3 weeks at a time. And at MareCet, we are running multiple projects all at once. So as a result, my job actually takes me away from home a lot, away from my beloved dogs a lot. I do miss them a lot when I'm out at sea. Of course, I love it when I'm out at sea, when I'm, with these animals that I've loved forever. But it definitely takes me away a lot from home. I'm kept busy all the time because the other thing that we do is marine education programs. So we run programs for schools, for the general public. So that also takes me away from home, away from my own desk. So I spend a lot of time outdoors. Of course, in the last 1.5 years, we have mainly been indoors because of the pandemic. So I have been mainly indoors, and we've been curating a lot more online information, online content. But on a normal day, I'm out and about a lot, either in the field or traveling locally or abroad for meetings and conferences to discuss issues relating to the animals we work with, as well as the marine habitat. So I spend a lot of time, and then of course doing research. After that, we have to come back at the desk, and we have to crunch a lot of numbers and write up reports and write up our findings in publications. So that takes time as well. So during the times that we are not in the field, then I'm usually busy at my desk, working up the analysis, writing reports, curating online information, and then also just where I can try to have a bit more work-life balance, and at any opportunity of free time that I have, I try to go out and do something different that's not related to my work. So it could be going to the theatre, local theatre, going to the movies, going hiking in the forest, or taking a swim at the waterfalls, or cooking, or playing with my dogs, catching up with them. Yeah. So there's never a dull moment, and never ever enough time in a day or in a month or in a year to do everything. But life is exciting. So in terms of research, I enjoy being able to be out in the outdoors. I enjoy being able to go to places that not everybody gets to visit, because maybe it's harder to reach. It's not a tourism place, and I get to see some of these places for the pristine beauty that the places hold. So I enjoy being out there at sea and just being in my happy place. I call the ocean my happy place because it's really where I feel the most free. I feel happy. So in terms of the research, I also enjoy the thrill of being able to discover new things about the animals that we study, whether it's discovering a new individual in the population or finding out what they eat, and understanding why they behave in a certain way, where they move, etc. So, and then, with the work that I do with dugongs, sometimes we have to dive to look at their seagrass habitats. So diving obviously is always fun, and diving in a seagrass meadow is always exciting as well, even though it all looks plain. But if you look closer, you'll start seeing little critters that popping up from behind the seagrass. So that's what I really enjoy the most. I also enjoy sharing the information that we have gathered through research, and sharing it with other people. So I really enjoy it when we get to run programs with schools and with children, and tell them all about dolphins, tell them all about dugongs, and to tell everybody that, hey, we all can do our part and all be everyday ocean heroes. So I really enjoy being able to share that information and to learn as well from students about their perspectives and their perceptions about conservation and what they think they could do as well, in their part for conservation work. What's difficult about my job? I think for me now, what's difficult about my job is a few things as well. So sometimes it's difficult to be away from home for extended periods of time. I feel like I'm leaving my doggies behind and they miss me and I miss them. What can be difficult is sometimes when we're out at sea, we are exposed to all the elements: rain, heavy rain, strong winds, intense sunshine. We're out on a boat for maybe 8 to 9 hours a day for 3 weeks in a row. So it's very intensive. A lot of people think that my job involves swimming with dolphins and in my swimsuit all day long, maybe sunbathing on the deck. But actually, what is involved is long hours of holding heavy equipment and doing observations under all these different weather conditions. So that can be difficult. It can take a toll on the body. We do get exhausted. I think the other thing that's difficult sometimes is getting everybody on board with the conservation story, getting people to understand why doing the little things every day, for example, like giving up single-use plastics, so saying no to a plastic straw, saying no to a plastic bag when you go to the supermarket. I think it's difficult sometimes to get people to understand why it's important and why every little action that we do here, where we live in a city, maybe it's far away from the sea, how that will eventually impact marine life and marine habitats. So making that connection, getting people to understand that connection, and getting people to understand that we all don't have to go and do big things. We all don't have to go out and be like Superman or Wonder Woman. We can all do little things every day to make a difference for these beautiful animals and the marine habitat. Because we need to understand that if we secure these marine habitats, we are also protecting our own future. Because, for example, we eat a lot of fish, we eat a lot of seafood. And contrary to some people's belief that fish come from the supermarket, fish actually comes from the sea, right? So I think changing people's mindset about the need to care, changing people's mindsets about the fact that conservation is not just the responsibility of a scientist or conservationist like myself, but it is everyone's shared responsibility. I think that's one of the challenging things. And of course, with that, I think fundraising to do the work that we do is also not easy because it's all linked. Because if we can't get people to understand the importance of what we're doing, then it's hard to get people to want to support us. So basically, we have to work a lot harder to explain to people why this is important. For example, if we talk about medical issues, for example, it is very easy for people to relate, whether it's cancer, diabetes, mental health, because these are things that affect people, and it might affect people that it might affect people in your family, etc. So then you feel very drawn to these causes and you think, okay, I need to support this cause, whether it's finding a cure for cancer or advocating for mental health awareness. But when we are less connected physically, daily to the ocean, it's really that much harder to convince people why they should care, why they should support. So going back to that, because of that, fundraising can be tough because we're competing with a lot of other causes that are also important, but that are a lot more relatable to people. And of course, the final challenge I would say is not having enough resources to do more. So it's all linked. So again, it goes back to the fact that fundraising can be difficult. So sometimes there are a lot of things that we want to do, but we do not have the means to do it. The other thing as well is conservation itself is a really long process. For example, to get a law passed to say that this species should be protected, to get a law passed to say that this area should be protected for this species or this group of animals. Actually, it takes a really long time. It can take years, sometimes decades before they finally pass a law. So even if today I say, okay, I want this area to be gazetted as a protected area because through my research I have found that this is an important breeding ground for this species of dolphin, for example. Okay, with all our research, maybe we will prepare a report that we may submit to the people in power, the authorities, to deliberate. But because there's so many complex issues to consider in terms of law, in terms of other stakeholders, so maybe there are people who live in this area that we have to consider them and their livelihoods, how they are using the area. So there will need to be a lot of negotiation with all the different stakeholders. And then of course in the end, the decision makers, the authorities, are the ones who will have to make that decision based on all the information that they have. But this process truly can take anything from 5 years, that would be considered quite quick, to 20 years or more. Yeah. So, but nature doesn't wait, and conservation, the threats keep happening as we speak. Even as I speak now, probably something is happening out there, right? Maybe a dolphin is getting caught as we speak. Maybe a turtle is ingesting a plastic bag even as we speak now. So conservation issues don't wait. So I think what can be frustrating and difficult about my job is getting something done, getting a solution for a conservation problem done in time before it's too late. And that's always a challenge. I would say having a deep interest and passion is good, but I will also say now that there's a lot of information out there on the internet, on social media. First would be to equip yourself with the understanding of what's happening, and to be inquisitive, to understand what's happening. And of course, if there's a certain group of species that interests you, or a certain ecosystem that interests you, you can dive deeper to find out more about those things. And then I would say when someone is old enough to volunteer, maybe before they go off into university, if they're old enough to volunteer, then do volunteer for these different organizations that are doing marine science as well as conservation work, because it helps give a good grounding of the reality of the kind of work that we do. And why do I say that? Because as I mentioned, a lot of people have the impression that my job is very easy, that I spend most of my days swimming around in my swimsuit with dolphins, which is really not the case. So I think it's important to understand that coming into marine science will require skills, but also time away from home, and you're gonna have to love nature. You're gonna have to want to be immersed in nature, into the elements, and then of course doing conservation work primarily, or for a big part, deals with dealing with people. So you must like interacting with people, because conservation work involves interacting with people a lot of the time. So I would say volunteering would be a very good way to see if you like doing the scientific part of the work, if you like doing the communications and education part of the work, interacting with people. Or sometimes when you volunteer for a certain organization, they may need you to assist with interacting with stakeholders, the people who are involved in a certain scenario that is in need of a conservation solution. So you can see for yourself which part of this job fits you most, interests you most, and do you think it's something that you would like to really do in the long term? Because what I find is that many young people have an idea, just like me. I wanted to be a marine biologist. I love dolphins, and I thought, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my degree and I'm going to come back and save the dolphins. But I realized that saving the dolphins involves a lot of different things, a lot of different processes, right? As I mentioned, from research to education and awareness to policy change. So, and I found that sometimes my degree in marine science didn't equip me with every segment of my work. So I had to learn new skills as I moved along, which is fine because learning never ends and we should always learn and keep ourselves up to date with things. But I would definitely say, if I could tell my younger self, give my younger self, my aspiring marine biologist kid self, some tips of what I should do to get into this field, these are the things that I would tell myself. Volunteer more, understand how conservation and research works, and explore what are the avenues that truly interest you. So some people can do everything and they like doing everything. Some people just like doing certain segments, but that's okay because that's why we work in a team, right? As a team, you have your role, I have my role, this other person has his or her role. Yeah, so but definitely gaining more experience and a broad understanding of what you're getting yourself into in this field is important, because what we see on TV, on the documentaries, it's beautiful, right? You see the whales breaching and you see the lions running across the plains, or the polar bear walking across the ice sheets, the penguins incubating their eggs, etc. Those are all amazing shots, but it only gives you a small portion of the story. So a lot of people who come up to me who ask for advice about becoming marine biologists, for example, in their mind they think that if they want to do marine science and conservation, especially with conservation work, what they will be doing most of the day is maybe watching dolphins leap in the air or whales breaching, without realizing that actually no, there is a field element to it. That's one small section, and then there's the desk element, which is you have to analyze your data, then you have to spread the word, share the awareness with the public, with students, with government agencies, and then you have to do the work to push for change, which often takes a lot of time, energy, and strategy. So what we see on TV, all those beautiful images, is just a small percentage of what our work really involves. Being able to see those species out in their beautiful habitat is definitely a bonus. I would say it's definitely a perk of my job. I've seen so much of what nature can offer through my work, but that's really just a percentage of all the work. Yeah, so I hope that answers the question of what should people do if they wanted to get into this job. I think gaining experience and a good understanding of what it takes to do the job, and of course to have the passion and the drive, because this job doesn't always pay very well. So if you're somebody who is in need of a high-paying job, or maybe you do want to make a lot of money, it's just harder in this line of work. It's not impossible, but it's harder. And a lot of us do this work primarily first because we believe in a cause, we believe in making a positive impact in this world, and we want to help find solutions to man-made problems, and we want to inspire others to do good and to be everyday Earth heroes as well.